Just wake up some morning notes. Transitional activities. Oh, I can't remember the right words. I'm going to expect certain things from certain people. I'm going to want notes from people regarding requests for what they want or think would be a good idea with AI agents. I can also include how many AI agents. I look upon the base installation of having at least 5 per person. That's 5 computers. Whatever you can run through those computers connected into the mainframe, which could actually be a lot, which means you might end up running 10,000 active agents. I think I had some old notes and did not get through something I wanted on my other transition material. Wanted Garland to oversee the making of a report respective to why he was denying material to Congress. I would expect that he would be having parties do this, and he would oversight it and then stamp it at the end. Expected contents would have to be materials pertaining to reasoning structure behind instances and examples, hopefully of a specific nature, of why he believes that parties would abuse the information. Also, I believe that actionable understanding would need to be comparable. This would mean that if based upon previous attitudes in the past that they believe that a certain parties might do certain things, that it would be inside the box to say it is believable that certain things could happen, that could be actionable. Estimates would be good regarding that area. Participatory understanding. This information also will be very good with an AI system. I'm assuming that there is a certain number of AI systems already running, although it's not completely clear. I believe I've mentioned before with my administration that there will be mass implementation of AI. There will basically be no such thing as a telephone that is not AI assisted. That means that everybody gets a witness, so to speak, and that there's an oversight mechanism and a corrective assistive mechanism there as well. That's the idea. Additional items of high importance would be developing a plan. I need estimates and plans respective to the Justice Department's position on estimations of mass cellular device attacks. This would be, in my view, an obvious understanding of what would occur and what would the plan be if 30 million cellular devices were to explode basically simultaneously, although it could be over the course of the day or 3 days, a week, respective to a comparative understanding of the new tactical change that has now occurred. So the item's attitude here would be, I wouldn't want to hear a bunch of people talking about how that can't be done. They would be in that temporary, you're temporarily fired and you have to go stand in a corner until somebody decides you're not fired. because, I'm not going to listen to it. I'm an expert. I have a lot of expertise in electronics, and I know how to do this stuff. So I'm really not interested in people not getting on board with an understanding of the tactics. Now, if they're, as far as opinions on variances, believing that certain styles of batteries would not blow up in the same way, I'm completely on board for variances because I'm aware of them myself. But the essential understanding that any device that gets connected either to cellular or to the internet is basically subject to having the battery exploded. There are some additional items. We would have to have special meetings on that regarding to focused field energy resonant modification technologies. This is a deep subject. This is something that's going to be a DOD matter as well. Of course, I'd be wanting similar reports on some of these things from different departments. But particular, I need to know how the Justice Department is going to react if all of a sudden, basically firefighters, ambulance workers, doctors, nurses, and police officers have their cell phones explode, accompanied by a tactic where somebody decides to basically attack all of the basic school children and even college people throughout the country. So the anticipatory attack in that area is roughly 30 million. This would obviously mean that our services, emergency services, would be inundated. And this would mean that there would be certain vulnerabilities, certain things could be occurring respective to a situation like that. I realize the situation would be dealing with a lot of people that would have minor injuries, psychological injuries, but there would be obviously the understanding that some deaths could be involved there. What that number would be, it's hard to scale it. We could look at the way things went with the Israeli situation and scale that. I think that we need to consider the possibility of additional possible add-on styles. In other words, somebody may decide to basically have a series of alternate explosions into that situation, since everything's going to be a mess. And this could be things like people attacking literally dozens of banks to disrupt the banking industry, to also pay for their operations by doing various thefts and whatnot. So understanding the power that even the smallest terrorist organization could possibly pull off something as though we're discussing here. We need a plan for the public. The obvious, can you get your kids to just, use a coffee can and generously wrap it with electrical tape? That's something better than nothing, but perhaps we need some more minds out of the box to come up with better solutions. There were people who were selling metal sleeved containers for blast-proof situation, but those didn't seem to catch on very well. I remember seeing those for about 7 years. So bringing something back like that, individual needs and requests, obviously that would be on board with certain things. Different styles of possible placement of cell phones in vehicles. This needs to be deeply thought out, because you can place it where it's safe to humans, but is it going to incapacitate the unit? So that needs to be considered in the line of reasoning, that if you end up on alert, that a change out, I believe I've already discussed the the situation involving the cases, where we're going to issue the briefcases, and there's going to be a lot of cellular devices issued. Again, many of those devices are going to not be turned on. The idea is that the batteries would essentially be fully charged, but the devices would not be activated. So they would not necessarily be subject to exploding under this present scenario. I'm not going to say that there isn't a scenario to cause something to happen there, but basically it's important to understand that this is one of the reasons that the policy that I'm bringing out is that I want to make sure that everybody is issued briefcases, these affordable briefcases, and we want to have certain numbers of phones and pre-made cards in them. We want to have an accountability mechanism. We want, every time the case is open, something's recording. We want that recording to be able to be duplicated. We want it to be, so there's going to be a redundant device on that. These can be small devices, and then it will be uploaded at the appropriate time. We now have to upgrade the cases themselves. We have to have an understanding of blast-proof arrangement for the base batteries of the security devices, not to intrude upon the rest of the case, and also to leave the case basically operationable. So in other words, if it occurs, we still want to have the case basically be able to be usable. So this is important. Now the understanding here that basically part of the reasons that I was discussing earlier in one of the other recordings deals with distribution, effectively using agents and government workers as mass distribution agents means that this can be very effective, but you already have to have the units reachable. They have to be either with them in their vehicles, at their desk, preferably both, field units versus desk versus building units, to be able to quickly and efficiently redistribute forms of communication equipment. Having basically an automatic AI load system would be an ideal item. This means somebody turns on a phone and you can do something where basically you can dial a 3-digit number and the number's automatically going to be understanding that you have cellular serial numbers, and that those had been pre-purchased and would be identified as available items for activation. So by just calling that number, it's going to automatically activate the device and send back in text the number and say, here you go, here's your phone number, it's now been activated, you're ready to go. You should have been a little other information that would have been like, you probably got this through case number yada yada whatever, through the DOJ department, whatever, however it came about. So there would be a little bit of basic information in there, whatever would be deemed pertinent, if so, being pertinent. So there would also be the certain understanding that certain numbers would be unlisted. An unlisted phone set would be, you call the 3-digit number, it activates everything, does everything, sends back a text, tells you that you have a predetermined set of names, which could be certain other services, in which basically the basic information would have certain information that you'd be able to transfer that information. That could also come into another predetermined name. In other words, you could have somebody's mother, John's mother, Tim's mother, whatever, but it's not real. It's not necessarily a real number. It's a real number, but it never really activates or does anything. But the text line works, so it gives you an area to hold little messages. And this is there for a reason, because if you dialed the 3-digit number, you might need to delete from the call record the 3-digit number and the activation, so that somebody looking at your phone could understand possibly that this was not a hand issue phone. That could be pertinent to a RICO situation or some other situation, to understand where somebody got their phone from. So once it's handed to them, we don't necessarily want it to be sourced. That's, again, for certain types of RICO or certain situations. So this has to be encompassed in the plan as well. I'll say also, obviously, any genius out there that has ideas on modifications on these, great. Everything is open to any kind of additional brilliance at any given time. I want to talk about the disaster relief facets of this capability. Real quick, since I'm here, the additional plan that I want to implement into this type of a system is also going to have the max production plan basically implemented into this. This is a series of basically what it is people can get, there would be pre-made packages. There would be packages that would be issued to the departments themselves to be able to distribute them themselves. Also in the field. And, there will be several of these that could be handed out in the field. The purpose behind this is that aside from me wanting max production of all citizens, effectively, if we have an emergency situation, it becomes very useful if you have people that are unclear about what they're going to be doing, if all of a sudden they can be handed over a pack, basically, which is as simple as it's basically a cell phone wallet. You open it up and there's a cell phone and there's some other pertinent information, maybe another device in it, and there's some cards in it, and basically it's ready to go. This is a packet. This is like a wallet that looks about like the size of basically a checkbook, which also could actually technically be encompassed a certain number of checks. Now, what's in this basically is that the programming has fingerprint scanning capability. So you scan your fingerprint, that's going to go into a database. Somebody scans, for instance, their left finger. This is something that I wanted to do because we want to keep it separate from other databases. We don't want somebody utilizing, because usually everybody uses the right hand and the right fingers. We're going to use, in this type of kit situation, it's going to be the left fingerprint. That way everything is a completely different setup. Not that somebody getting booked wouldn't have all their fingers basically scanned, or somebody for safety's sake or whatever, your kids or whatever. What's important here is that this kit has the ability to scan, verify your identity, your fingerprint, and then basically in the system know whether or not you have already had an emergency construction setup kit. So, because the first one is automatic, as to say that if you don't have one, you're entitled to one. So with this is a quick understanding of, yes, you can hand one out. The idea is to have pre-made packages. The way this works is it has different settings on it. There are instructions that are pre-made files that explain things right in the cell phone. The cell phone is also AI equipped, is the idea. This is going to be equipped with an AI, so you can call the AI and ask it anything, ask for help, whatever, and the AI would be able to help facilitate you. There is also a dedicated onboard AI. This is a small AI that is particularly programmed for the certain features in question respective to that device and whatever the device's extended capabilities are. Obviously, people come about, they have a million ideas coming in their head real quick, like, Well, what if I can't afford to make the payments? There are auto set, auto request, automatic readjustments. For instance, you can pick one that says, I don't want to start payments of any kind for 3 years. And it's a graduated payment loan system on that. And you can do certain rescheduling. This also is basically important. So there's not a reason for somebody not to utilize the kit. It has the capability of basically assuming that you're going to immediately want to hire 1 to 3 people to assist you. These would be beyond the AI. These would be like real human beings. Many of them might be part-time. You might be switching them, so forth, etc. The item works pretty much like a contractor payout, where the contractor or the developer gets paid in increments based upon the project and its level of completion. So this progresses along in certain increments. So to keep some kind of a safety valve as to what's transpiring in the event somebody's having too many problems, AI is there to assist them. If they're still having too many problems, what happens is they get assigned basically an advocate to assist them. This is an Oracle status type item. These kits, basically everybody qualifies for them. So people in the department qualify. Yes, you can hand them out to the people in the department, but please don't use the filled kits is the idea. Use the kits that are at the building. They can get replenished. Basically, okay, more about how this works. Basically, anytime hard assets are built new, the government gets to print money. So the reports that would be like drones that would be doing much of the inspection. Yes, there can be physical oracles to inspect as well, but a lot of site verification can be done by drones, remote drones. This can be eventually remotely operated, remotely done. Human oracle oversighted, assisted. So you have a dispatch agent that's going to monitor these things. They'll have their own flight levels and clearance, so forth, etc. Basically, again, every time you create a new project, what ends up happening is it's going to have the incremental payouts verification, and in each stage, the government's going to be able to print new money based upon the completion percentage of the project. So this is funding, by the way, that should be statistically averaged out to at least $90,000 in new government printing per project, and there's a $90,000 estimated asset gain, so to speak, equity gain. This does not include the people taking the pay for doing some of the work themselves. So this is something that effectively becomes far more efficient than working with many of the tax statuses that we've been working with in the past. The importance of getting people back to work, back at max productivity, or adding overdrive capabilities if they're already working. I'll say something about the efficiency of these kits. Basically, once the template is designed, it becomes likened to basically a copy and paste and reduplicate these. So what can come in the kit, predetermined accounts. There can be predetermined accounts that are pre-approved, pre-guaranteed with like Lowe's, Home Depot, general construction materials, credit card extension guarantee, whatever. Additional types of things, bank accounts, pre-approved, pre-set up to manage things separately. So basically, it's like a whole business template that just, once you activate it, it just turns on. It automatically does features. It automatically assigns the names. And it deals with the addresses and everything like that. Now, you can have different situations for these items. For instance, let's say that you have insurrection, state of emergency. This means you're going to have a lot of people that are basically in RICO protection. And, you're just trying to figure out how to deal with this. Well, getting these people active to be able to build something and do something means that they can have predetermined presets for new identity, alternate identity, even though the system knows who they are. These can be automatic protection measures built into the system. There's a way to do this. So, again, I'll mention the convenience that basically, for many citizens, the average citizen statistically, the government's going to make more money off this project coming in, being able to print currency, than it will collect in taxes from that person normally. Usually at least twice, sometimes 3 times the amount of currency. So the logic here is that it's far more logical to do this project than to worry about a lot of tax equating on people's normal life job situations. So this also applies whether they have a job or not. If they don't have a job, that's great. That means they're available more to immediately move the project forward and get completion done faster. Okay. All right, for those of you that are curious, yeah, a lot of this is pre-made. It's got a blockchain factor to it in certain areas. The way the loans work, most of the loan stuff is maintained through an automatic blockchain set of pre-choices, basically, and it is AI assisted and does have Oracle features, the human factor that accessible at certain points. But it's of key importance to understand the efficiency of this design, because basically a $300,000 to $700,000 home can easily possibly have long-term loan charge management fees of say $65,000 upwards to there. Basically, with this blockchain system, it's basically going to ideally eliminate all of those charges below $3,500. Again, because much of this is made into an automated item, and basically there's virtually no real estate associated with the project. So you have dramatically lowered cost in the total design of the way the project works. And again, a lot of the project is blockchain Oracle assisted. Again, people will have different questions like, well, where am I going to build? I don't have a location. All of that is assisted through the AI and through the device, which means you can look at the area. They can look at the area they're in. They can look at areas nearby. They can even consider moving to another town. Especially, this could be the best option. If somebody's in a RICO situation, insurrection factors, ideally it's a good idea to get these people to a completely different location, which means they could be building a cabin project. So these people might be immediately relocating to another area. So this is also the logic here to be able to deal with that situation. If they're RICO protection-y, then basically you could have more agent visits, for instance. This is to be managed by the system respective to a security matrix management system. We'll talk about that. That's kind of complex. I've got a lot of ideas on it. It's not complete. It can happen very rapidly. There's ways where we already operate things at a cellular level, at an individual justice cell, and they have the individual power to decide what to do. So integrating with these cells ideally is going to be one of the options to work into this project. Again, a lot of this project actually can be effectively adjusted and co-written very rapidly with AI, basically. So it's amazing how fast and rapid these changes can be implemented and added into the blockchain options. Obviously, parties have probably thought about special authoritative kits. Yes, there can be a lot of dedicated and reasons for that, and the way that those matrices can work, and special protections to keep individual cells intact, operating completely independent. Now, effectively, many of these designs have a small miniaturized component understanding. That is, that they can, at any given time, operate as an independent cell. So if you have a main central breakdown, these things are still going to go on preset determinations of forward coursing. So if I track back, basically, an agent, you have this, You see people in an area where you're at, and you can basically go up and initiate conversation, ask questions, and make field decisions and say, yeah, have you tried going for one of the new home construction options? And, people are going to be like, no, I don't know how to apply for that. And since you never applied for it, okay. You want to apply for one? And basically you can have a kit right there. You press a button, it's going to play a real quick video that's about 2 minutes that explains what the ad, it's an ad, what the program is in short. And someone goes, oh, that's interesting. And then you hit another button, you go, here, you want to apply? And they're like, they hear the part, oh, I don't have to make payments for 3 years. Nope. And if you're having a problem with the project, you can turn the project back over. There are different options, so, and end up cashing out and still making money on it. So you want to apply, and they say yes. You go, okay, here you go. You go up, you say, here, put your left thumbprint on that. Put left thumbprint on it, and it goes through. It hits the system. It comes back and says, no record on file. Party wants to apply. You hit button, boom, automatic application. Then you hand them the phone. You say, here you go. That's your kit. And it's like a wallet pulled out. And you say, well, just talk to the AI. Everything's there, multi-choice. It will tell you everything. Just spend some time with it. It'll explain everything. You're done at that point. You've done your bit, and the rest of monitoring and assistive tooling, all that other stuff is going to be interactive between those persons. So, again, the convenience of having distribution of certain key factors and powers and options is essential. Having that little briefcase that has these different optional types of items in there is, again, essential, because you can respond to different situations and be deployed, and you can just handle a little tiny piece of it. In many cases, what you would be doing is the computer might select something already predetermined. When you go out on a run or whatever and say, okay, look, you're in this area. After you've done your sweep, we want you to go over and see these certain people, hand out certain kits. There can be other agents, other people that can work with handing them out. You can end up turning over packages, like it says go over, the computer says go over, turn over 5 class 7 phone wallet pack kits to a school teacher, and the school teacher is going to hand them out or something to various school agents or whatever. So again, the idea is it's very versatile. It can become anything at any time. The concept is you don't have to start a supply chain all over the place and deal with a massive situation. You've already got predetermined kits already in hand and a predetermined mechanism to make all of this work. And obviously, if we have a national tragedy, you can be basically distributing something every week when you go places. So this is important to be able to get certain things going, So again, because everybody basically is guaranteed applies to get an application and get approved on this. It's a max production project. And again, the government makes more money being able to print than it will collect in taxes. So this is far more efficient. This gets everything back on track and moving forward. I'm sure some of you will be apprehensive as to what a lot of it. A lot of it might be, you could be stopping by a fire station. They don't have them yet, or you're replenishing, you're swapping. They're waiting for some to be delivered, and you're the guy that's been decided, well, deliver some of yours. You're right next to it. You drive 3 miles away, you pop in and say, hey, I'm ordered to turn over to so-and-so, and it's, again, left fingerprint custody situation. So you say, okay, I just need your left fingerprint on each of these, deep, on a changeover custody screen. Deep, very, very rapid, very fast, you're done. 5 minutes. If you want to talk, you can be there 20 minutes, fine, but you can do it in 5. Ideally, having different types and levels of these kits available for people, basically at each level of government is very convenient, because then you're talking about a supply chain delivering into government that can move very, very rapidly. You can basically have drones, delivery drones, set down on top of buildings that are equipped for it. You know, this would be police stations, hospitals, federal buildings, etc. And basically that gets a form of supply chain going where there is an availability immediately diversified and available. Will there be other chain areas? Yes, but I'm telling you about some of those because it gives you field options in these areas as well. Okay, continuing here. So this is me, morning wake up. The purpose here is not for me to hand out and have other people be my secretary. Gee, I would have been doing these things differently if my entire fleet had not been destroyed. So I'm still trying to sort a lot of this out. I'm trying to get other avenues of different transitional activity to be moving forward. Certain items finished, validated. But the human factor, the human voice factor of a real human being is a genuine factor for people to understand that, in fact, so basically the human factor is of key importance here. We want the human factor so people have a taste and a flavor of there's human beings in the loop, and we have some kind of intelligence connected to this, some kind of impartment of brilliance, some kind of impartment of trustworthiness, ethics, so forth, etc. Okay, continuing, transitional items I expect in my administration. Respective understanding of communications, domains, and emails. The federal law states that anybody who maintains a domain or email has registration and must receive service from those avenues. Now, advanced systems calling, like, for instance, Google, they're going to automatically scan any type of a virus that could possibly be in something that someone sends you in a packet. So if you're governmental, you're supposed to have an automatic feature to be able to deal with scanning anything. So I don't want to hear anybody say that they're not going to open up attachments and see what material is. That's BS. You're required to receive service anyhow. So you tell people that are at home that may not have a service, but that's Neanderthal stuff. That's 35 years ago. Don't open up anything you don't recognize. And there's a few people that still use certain email services that don't have automatic virus scanning. So the concept of this pass along that somebody's going to open up a packet and take over their stuff is all BS. You know, and I don't want to hear anybody ever in the department saying that our policies not open up that. No, you have to. Federal law states you have to receive service. You have to read everything. And there's no reason not to already have proper services. They're going to scan everything. I don't want to hear it. I do not want to hear someone make excuses. I'll give you charges. I'll put you in jail. I'm not even going to play with that. So that's not a policy item. That's adhering to the law. So I don't want to hear people running around misquoting things as though it's a mid to late 80s understanding of don't open your email, because that's Neanderthal stuff. We're way past that, and we have been way past that for many decades. So I don't want to hear it. We need to be attentive to any materials that we can get our hands on, and all the automatic features should automatically be installed in anybody's computer that has it. If it doesn't, then there's something wrong with your department, and I'll take a notice on that. Yeah, let me know. Your department doesn't want to outfit you with the right tools. I want to know what's wrong. Other items of what to expect. The overall understanding of response time on efficiencies to communications respective to departmental areas is a variant. Right now, the Department of Justice, it's pretty horrible. You have people that have unknown relate times, incapable of getting communications through at all. You have people that are stuck on 15, 25, 30-minute wait times. That shouldn't happen at all. The response time basically has gone from about 5 minutes from the 80s basically to the present, where it's just ridiculous. This is a problem because there's a lot of different problems on the communications with the agencies. Parties who might be reporting something, you don't want people to get off track of thought if they're going to be reporting something. So you don't want them to wait, number one. You don't want to give them a chance to change their mind or become bored or allow paranoia to set in or whatever it is. So now, effectively here, the policy with the AI implementation with the AI overlap. Complicated in a way, yes, but in many ways simple. It's actually not funny when you consider that you can go to some company like OpenAI and spend $20 a month and get an employee for $20 for a month, and basically have them answer your phones for you. And you can have a series of prompts that basically modify that particular AI. So working on streamlined AIs that are more to focus can be helpful. But the importance here that job performance effective to people who are phone handlers has completely disintegrated. We have lots of people who are hirees, and these people are not diversified to understand the styles of calls that can come in from a nation, from a nationwide nation. And assistive tooling is the only way that I can see to upgrade that situation. This means tooling can be a matter of a delay where you inform parties and say, look, we're going to use some AI assistive tooling here because it's ultra brainy. And so there's going to be a delay. Someone's going to say something, the AI is going to evaluate, the AI is going to come back, make certain recommendations. Presently, AI is not always going to make sense. You know, you're going to have hallucination factors, different factors. This gets refined more down to prompts. Now, you can get very tight operating AIs if you put the right programming in them. But you're talking about a very tight set of logic programming. In order to get AIs to be really tight, you basically have to program these things with a form of truth science that's like having a HAL 9000, so to speak. In other words, so because symmetries, with computers, symmetry is a stage reflectiveness. So when you have language and you have different language contexts that have evolved and that go up and down, and you have slang, you have a set of variances of how the mathematical unfolding scope of all these items work. So if you don't have a pure logic core to begin with, programmed set in, then you're going to have a mess. You're going to end up, your AI is not going to work properly. Overall, in evaluations on the quick, there's a problem with AI law, and that is the fact that many laws that have been made are not constitutional and they're on the books. They're not well thought out. There's corrupt situations involving bad decisions, bad judges. And these reflectively, since they're programmed on the whole into the system, make problems with the AI to be able to be accurate, because it's basically been poisoned. It's poisoned by the sheer fact that the overall mass legal situation is flawed and is poisoned, basically. So AI sees this on the larger scope. When it's echoing and looking at logics mathematically on a large scale rapidly, this is affecting the model. This is one of the reasons that models have problems. So the problem actually is more of a human problem than the model problem. So there's that. Overall, you should still get consistency of 70% accuracy relative to 90% accuracy. utilizing AI tooling. Now, the human factor for updating can also be supplemented by a predetermined series of prompts as an additional extension. So these can help refine things down quite a bit. Now, you're going to have to still end up having the Oracle human interaction factor respective to AI. But the thing is that the AI can effectively do extensive interviews with people if that's necessary. Some situations are more cut and dry. They're very simplified. A lot of situations are rollouts. That's been a tremendous problem with the agency across the justice systems, because a bank gets robbed, a guy puts a note, $30,000 is basically stolen. And you have 28 cops show up and 7 federal agents. And the guy's already gone, he's long gone, and they're going to spend time going through the procedures. This is an awful lot of money. You're basically talking about immediately spending $30,000 to go chase $30,000. You're also using a lot of agents' time up. Now, I'm not saying that you don't respond to these type of situations, but we might want to consider whether or not there can be alternatives to certain types of situations. So this might mean that you can downsize this enormously. Now, the flip side of this is the justice system does not have an understanding, and it is insultive to parties across the board that are scientists. People don't understand that 90% of the cutting edge of science is done by individuals. That means that the vast majority of classified material is generated by private citizens, usually in their home. Here is where there are going to be major policy changes. I hate to use the word policy, but effectively, when you have people that call up the Justice Department and they say, hey, look, I need fingerprints, I got burglarized, it looks like they have stolen maybe $50 million worth of cutting-edge research. Okay, we don't know whether this has been done by spies. It's always the wrong thing to do to say, send us a letter, we'll review it in 3 to 6 weeks. That's not how you respond. I will prosecute parties. I'm not even going to play games with parties. Okay, when people call you up and say that a bank just got $30,000 stolen, you're going to roll out 7 agents. And someone calls you up and says $50 million of cutting-edge technology research just got stolen. I'm not even going to listen to people that are saying that they're going to review it later. I'm going to arrest you immediately. Immediately, the AIS will report you and arrest you because you're a suspect for being a spy, for aiding and abetting spies and getting away with somebody's hard drives that might be going on a jet and escaping the country. And I'm not going to tolerate that kind of incompetence or that kind of aiding and abetting. So that's something that's again a non-negotiable item that's atop the table, because the agency is going to have to make adjustments. So the difference between transitional understanding and AI deployment and people being part of making the system better, and generality and mistakes that people might make is an adjustment period, but it's definitely different than people who are abandoning the entire empirical process of methodology. The concept of keeping standalone computers in modules so that they can stay independent with their materials and stay intact is crucial. Another item checked on basically over the course of the last 35 years, the department has been repeatedly infiltrated by foreign agents. This is a tremendous problem, and you have modular cells of people who've worked independently that have managed to keep many types of information and research intact. But overall, we have a generalized problem when it comes to any form of electronic communications and data storage. This means we have to address different sectionalization involving the handling of material. So there's an input section that's going to have AI. That still has the general vulnerability because it's hooked into the general communication lines. You have the modular system that has both internet and standalone systems. And the standalone systems are where you're doing your independent AI tooling and you're a standalone system. So you're working your module, your cell, forward to be able to deal with keeping your investigation independent and pure. And that means that there are updates that you have that nobody else is going to have. And that is where it's up to the decision process to whether or not information is shared. We're talking about a lot of system upgrades that we have to do. We have to come up with completely different extensional communication lines that operate on different situations. We have to completely change out the entire chip science. The concept that once upon a time brilliance now has permanent backdoors and anything, and we can now have people running around blowing up our cell phones or laptops or anything that has a battery in it is basically a serious problem. The government is liable for this. $10 trillion a year, yes, the government is liable for this. That is a big conundrum that has to be sorted out during my administration. The areas in dealing with how we restore integrity, unfortunately, various parties who were working on supposed fast-paced new implementation of systems, this has not been going well. You know, the progress on this has been not very good at all. You know, so there's $40 billion that has not done anything, and we should have had leaps and bounds changes occurring, and that did not occur. So what's going to happen is I've looked at some of the fragments, and some of them are good, and some of them don't make any sense at all. And we might have a total scrap out on that with my administration. We might be looking at a different implementation. This is going to mean a different type of cross understanding because we're also going to have to implement AI. So we might be, we're more realistically, we're probably talking about a $200 billion outlay because we're going to be talking about having new types of systems. Temporary stopgap stuff is going to have changeable MAC numbers where you change them like pull chips, basically, in order to try to keep certain integrity of types of electronics, whether it's government or somebody personally. And we're going to have to do this. This is going to have to be something that is done. There's going to be a certain problem with parties that are normally used to getting a hold of a lot of data and being able to sort it and come up with a lot of understanding about various things. But because basically we're at a point where terrorists no longer are going to be, well, basically utilizing the equipment that all this time has been set up for doing spying on, basically. It basically means that we have a huge conundrum system that no longer serves our purposes, nor is it going to. It's going to get further and further away as parties are going to be going with different options. You're going to have more and more independent manufacturers making various devices. So that backdoor system is now a huge backfire liability, and it has basically been turned into a strike weapon system. And we're going to have to disable it and dismantle it as rapidly as possible. And basically for a new style of system. So this is, yes, departmental. Also, it's going to be other departments, Department of Defense. I don't want to fully go into the next series of upgrades of where technology is going to be respective to different type of weapon systems, resonant deployment systems and stuff like that. There's a complexity to it, but we have a certain installment schedule that I'm going to be readdressing, and that's mostly going to be done with the DOD. It will have some Homeland Security aspects, but Basically, what I'm looking at is how do we undo this conundrum that we've created, because people are just going to flip out, and we cannot have no services happening, capability. So when we have basically the ability to buy a service as though it's an employee for $20 a month, and have them basically have a little bit of critiquing done, and this can be an optimum ultimate phone line handler for basically getting the ball rolling. This is a big embarrassment. It's a huge embarrassment, and we have to immediately address what new installments of technology. So high-speed installments, this is a blank check area as far as I'm concerned. There's going to be lots of people that are going to come up with custom problems all the time, and once I hear what their argument is, I'm going to go, okay, yeah, we got to deal with this, So this is something that is perfectly expected. Getting a responsive system back into play, we have to completely reassess what we're looking at when it comes to certain departments, especially the Justice Department, because we have a system now where we have in some areas an 80% failure rate to constitutional oath. 80%. This is unacceptable. This is a serious problem. We're going to have to deal with this. And unfortunately, some of the solutions are not necessarily going to be pretty. Now, there's other systems. I've talked about a little bit about the fMRI core security systems and to keeping certain core security going. And there's a health aspect to that as well. That's an expensive system. We don't have enough money to implement it everywhere. It's because it's going to give both health and security at the same time. But we have to think about that, because that can be a brand new reality in the next 5 to 10 years. So we have to see how miniaturization of certain sciences is progressing. And we have various companies that are working on that, and there's probably going to be a lot more stimulus in those areas. We have a situation basically where the AI system is going to be able to catch lots of anomalies. I mean, lots of anomalies. So the effective penetration rate of AI that is prompted properly and then reprompted and prompted again has a sort power that is just mind-boggling. This basically means that effectively all of the spies that the department has discovered within one of the departments or sub-departments over the course of the last 30 years, totaled up is going to be less than the new series of spies that are going to end up basically getting fronted off because of AI. And we have to brace for that. We have to be in acceptance of how that's going to work, and that people are going to get caught with the foreign and domestic aspects that are going to have to be sorted out. Now, many of them are going to be industrial aspects. That's basically where a lot of it's been anyhow, for profit. But that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be that big occasional surprise. When it comes to quantum analog digital linear conversion systems for looking at emotional states, the technology has a lot of flaws to it that I discovered. There are effective areas where you have nice generalities, but if somebody's a really good actor pretender, in other words, they're a super amoral sociopath, they can run an acting screen, and the system is not going to work unless you get into a more detailed quantum conversion aspect, and that's going to be expensive. That's a lot of development to look at the possibility of mass scale deployment on that. It does have the promise of saying that no one's encrypted and therefore everybody can be recorded. This is a bonus aspect, because this means that eventually the logical progressive research that's actually happening worldwide, even in China, India, Russia, is that basically people are going to basically have their heads recorded remotely. So it's going to become more than emotional states. It's going to be a much deeper penetration and understanding. There is both weapon system responses, disabling system is going to have to be a national security aspect, a nationwide deployment system. There's a lot of research, counter shields, this other stuff that can be done. It's very complicated. It's very expensive, but it is the next step that is being. We have to consider where that's going to be as far as its evolutionary understanding, because I know things about the technology, where it can go, how rapidly it can possibly go, but it depends upon what other nation states are going to make decisions on and actually discover for themselves. China has an incredibly advanced research system respective to this area. It's actually mind-boggling. And the scale of what they can implement on changes very rapidly, again, it's mind-boggling what could happen there. So this is something that I'm saying that I've looked at, I've addressed. We're going to have special rooms, special op rooms. These are going to be a dark room. This is, these are not going to be rooms that have unidirectional communication. These are going to be mission rooms. We might even have areas where people are going to go into facilities and they're going to stay there for 6 months. No communication is going to be really much coming out. There's going to be a little bit, but it's going to be like a Roach Motel. Information's going to go in. These people are going to be looking and studying a lot of things, and then you're going to have a changeover as to what's been sorted information, what can be looked at, who can be invited to the facilities, how do the lectures go down, vice versa, who can come out, what are the lecture levels that can be an allowance, workable to begin informing of the capability upgrades possible and the situational aspects that are considered and anticipated. Ultimately, there are stopgaps to this. There are certain types of shield systems where we can do electronic shield systems that effectively would work very, very well against the next 30, 50 years of technology being built at the Earth level, so to speak, at our Earth level. But this is not to say that somebody with advanced science and advanced civilization would not be able to read into this and read through. That's a different level of technology aspect. Someone's going to say, can we do any of this stuff? I'm not going to say no. I'm just going to say that to attempt certain things, to try to do certain things at certain levels, is so tedious. It is so much individual custom labor. It is so expensive. It's just mind-boggling. So that's just not practical. It's not practical. So moving along, that having been said, the here now aspect to dealing with what we're going to have to deal with now is somebody's mentioned repatriation factors. That'll be looked at. That is something that has to be dealt with. But the overall understanding on certain types of installment of legal purity actually deals with the constitutional level reinforcement. It doesn't necessarily deal with different types of policies on the scale that some people might be thinking. Policies are supposed to be written to be within the constitutional box and be assistive tooling respective to an understanding of how to deal with various situations for better sorting purposes. But unfortunately, there are huge problems with policies that have been invented nationwide, various levels of various government, where people have invented all sorts of policies and they're not even constitutional. This means basically you have people that have invented policies that are diabolically opposed to the Constitution of the United States. This means that basically, if you bring out the tactical tables on how this works, we have vast flaws in our system, which means that we are and have been vulnerable for a long period of time. That means that we have nation-state money usage and legal usage that can come in and do things to disable the government that's actually mind-boggling. And a lot of this has to do with hierarchical problems, the hierarchical problems of as the chain of command would go up, as someone would generally recognize the hierarchical methodologies and leadership, is that people have cut themselves off and isolated themselves from accountability, responsibility, and from action, which means that once a spy gets into certain levels, they just modify the policy and they make themselves into a king or a god, and you can't get rid of these people. They're a dictator. So this is a problem with our political system, and the understanding here is that it's actionable. Constitutionally, there's a lot of areas that are actionable. I am not joking when I'm talking about there are policies around the country that people have invented that are diabolically opposed to the Constitution, that violate certain areas of the Constitution, and it's just a rotary until the right situation comes up with the right facts, and you're going to have a bunch of people facing the death penalty, and it's not going to be funny. It's not going to be funny, and that's when the lesson learned of why our forefathers did certain tactical thinking when they structured certain things a certain way is highly important. This also will date back into some of the reference to the need to recover historical materials and understand a lot of generalized common sense items of law respective. It's going to be really, really needed because it's going to help us a lot as we basically end up resetting back to the constitutional format systems. There's a lot of areas that have to be worked with. There's a lot of areas where people have invented laws. Again, they're unconstitutional. We've even had some recent findings of the court where you had extensive groups that showed constitutional chain and explained that the vast numbers required for signatures in many areas was never intended by our forefathers and is unconstitutional. And we do have courts that have sided with that. And the reality of that is that as you bring AI online to do true core examination, there's a lot of areas that are finding, again, where we have a lot of flawed structure. And the concept of people making excuses like, well, we have to do this in order to keep elections more simplified is not going to matter. The reality that we have to return citizens to stewardship and have them attending stewardship meetings and continuing to educate themselves and addressing various issues is going to have to come home and stake at home. How this gets sorted out, you can't take the vote from somebody, but somebody said, well, some of these votes also control specialized areas, but the specialized areas are beyond normal voting expertise. The example shown is that people that don't have a high school education don't have the right to vote on something to tell a brain surgeon how to do brain surgery. And these are valid arguments that go into basically the reality that certain people are incompetent. So you wouldn't be taking the vote away from people, but you would have certain areas of high-end understanding of science that are supposed to be respected constitutionally, which would have additional breakdown understanding and consideration where we would have to deal with that as separate box levels, which might means we might have to start activating additional vote tiering, which means that some citizens may be required to participate in more governance, but this would be based upon some sort of understanding ethically and some sort of understanding educationally, not necessarily certified, but with the parties would have to prove that they had the grasp. So this new type of governance extension is something to still be considered and worked with. It's something that's going to have to be evaluated, tactical table AI. It's in one of the understandings of, can it be part of the higher performance mobility of various areas? And there's already some areas where extended governance options and participations have already been experimented by me and by other people. So that's another area that is going to have to also be addressed. This is going to mean that there might be additional pressures on departments to come up with some kind of understanding and criteria, recommendations as to some of this. It's not exactly predicted. I realize that this is kind of a quasi, it's just kind of a undefined area, but we have to roll with it as it is. I'm laying it out because it will be coming. It will happen under my administration, where things will have evaluations. Now, again, the general vote is probably going to have to be utilized to make ultimate decisions. But I'm not going to allow people to basically commit constitutional violations. Okay, moving on. So basically, one more nutshelling. Expanding voter rights is something I consider a priority. I'm going to leave it at that. You can give examples. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is already being done at many levels. You have unions that have governance voting. You have businesses that have governance voting. An understanding of, for instance, credit union gets money from the Fed. Okay, this is getting a hold of money that is, in effect, government sourced. Now, I'm going to go into this because it starts here, explain the governance, but we got other areas that we have to go and explore here. It's important because we have a lot of constitutional areas that have to be looked at. Now, effectively, unions right now can basically take off into outer space because of the new system that I've designed. The new system that I've effectively designed is going to be able to propel organizations individually like a rocket ship, because they have a mass number of members, and on the hard asset construction base, they will have unlimited access to Fed-sourced money. So into this, there's a certain amount of controversy because you have people going, well, what about banks? Well, credit unions actually are banks, and there's going to be new banks coming up, except everything that what people used to know about what banking was changes significantly, because now we can do things with computer blockchain design, and you have union and guild memberships that basically have collective power of offering guarantor, completion bond guarantor insurance factors. So being able to do this adds massive power, just massive power to be able to continue to do brand new hard asset generation projects. And this propels things forward rapidly, because any one of these new construction asset projects makes the government a lot of money because it gets to print money. You know, this is very important. It also helps members basically capture equity, asset acquisition in the form of equity. And this is also very important. So here we have a lot of areas where different types of governance is appearing, or going to be appearing, so to speak, where it's different than some of the other stuff where people did collective investments, and you have these other types of various fund coalitions, whatnot, that have governance voting for deciding green apps or whatever. You know, so this is something that's a bit different. It's based upon solidity. It's based upon all hard asset generation. So in other words, adding a bunch of services that don't have anything to do with hard asset generation are not necessarily even considerable. So of course this applies to anybody who's a government employee, because everyone who's a government employee is part of a union. And of course we're looking at also having departmental understanding, DOJ, others, respective to understanding constitutionality of certain types of new management cog systems, basically. So here we have a lot of options. There's going to be a lot of constitutionality issues. Departments are going to get involved. There could be reevaluation over other organizations or charges or invented charges, different various aspects. So these things will have to be, will continuously, I'll just say, be looked at by departments, probably the DOJ, etc. Now, into this, we also have the new coming complexities. Because if we're looking at the tactical table, we have the DOJ looking at making sure that there's ethics running respective to these various situations. They're going to get complex. That means we're going to have to upgrade various items, accoutrements, and whatnot at the DOJ, other different departments as well, to ensure that we have ethical matrices, so to speak. Now, some of you may have come to the conclusion that by doing blockchain super banking, that we might as well just go totally to all digital. And I'm going to say no, under no circumstances can we do this, because basically what happens if some terrorist groups figures out a way to get an EMP device halfway up to orbit and detonates it, and all of a sudden we have a third or half of the country where the electronic equipment is destroyed. That means that people are going to starve to death. They can't access any form of monetary system. So that means we still need banking intact for currency dispersing. Now, this is not to say that you wouldn't have new types of machines and currency dispersing that would come about that could work on a different matrix system, especially if you have people where you could end up having mobile rollout units. I mean, you could end up having basically companies that were transporting currency decide to add additional mobile units and show up basically at, malls and whatnot, crowded parking lots, and do a remote banking setup where they have a record of people that have a certain amount of financial holdings that are accessible and are in a standalone shielded database that was shielded from EMP. And then these people could be basically being a mobile bank. So this means, yes, armored cars basically could pop out and be at different locations. This is a good idea for states of not only just states of emergency, but we can also have it available for currency distribution in various areas. And these parties also might opt in for various stimulus programs concerning processing of new hard construction loans. In other words, various program setups. So you could have private contracting happening with this. You could also have unions themselves adopting a system where they have vehicles that go out mobilely. So it's a mobile ad service. They're advertising it. There's a goodwill factor. They're also maybe looking for new members to join up. So you're also looking at a new system of combinations that effectively can come into existence. Now, some people would look at some of the stuff that I've done and say, what you're doing in some ways looks like you could be threatening what banking is itself, because you're going to a blockchain with the Oracle-assisted situation. Well, in reality, there's going to be, in some ways, no stopping this type of new development, as I've tactical tabled and looked at all these different options and have been writing experimental code for these various areas. The understanding that, yes, banking is going to have a problem because it's going to be hard for them to compete in certain areas when the human-assisted normal way of doing things turns into an ultra-high-speed mobility item that somebody can do through their cell phone. So this is important to understand. But we also have other needs that we have to consider that It's in the nation's interest to make sure that we still have a diversified number of banking locations. This might even mean that we have to go to a system where we actually pay banks to distribute currency. This could be a reality. It's something that has to be looked at. And again, it's something that's going to, again, all of these different facets are going to have a DOJ mass tactical financial table warehouse evaluating all of this kind of stuff. It's going to be a crucial understanding ongoing. And that's basically going to be with us forever. You know, as this comes into play, it's going to be something that's going to be there forever. I feel I need to talk some more about different types of ideas involving new options that can just appear. And these are people who could start up a meme coin, a token, a crypto, whatever, and accompany a series of facilitating certain types of options that might normally be done by a bank or a savings and loan or a union bank, so to speak, or guild bank. This can have an explosive capability in many ways because you have different types of insurance backtoe coming into play. As I worked with modeling different types of systems, the discovery that you have multiple source, high-end accelerated rates of basically new interface options. If you listen to other of my material, you would understand more about this. But basically, for instance, Social Security is the largest fund in the history of the world, closely followed by basically other nations' equivalents. So now we're talking about international treaties doing the same thing. That would be Britain, Canada, etc. Getting on board with basically the super high-performance upgrade system of building new hard assets for every citizen. So in the reality saying that, yeah, everyone has a Social Security account and they're going to be paying into it theoretically unless they become disabled, but we already have disability insurance understanding respective if people become disabled, you know. I mean, you can be beaten half to death early in life by a cop and you're disabled for the rest of your life, but your potential would have different ways of being evaluated at different points in time across your life. But the understanding that you're still encompassed by disability insurance because most people paid into something. They paid into job disability insurance. You've got the Social Security disability insurance. And I want to reevaluate and make sure that we have a 100% ready balanced system that has 100% coverage. And the way to do this is to do some modifications, which will happen under my administration. Now, the effective understanding that since you have access, since you can say there is an account here, I don't want to be discriminated against. Here's where DOJ comes into play again, is that if anybody is tapped into having a mass fund that's available for them on guarantors, why can't they use that fund for a guaranteed hard asset construction loan? And quite simply, the reasoning here is there is no reasoning to stop someone from doing this because you're talking about 100% guaranteed. Number one, you know, you're building a hard asset. You know, this is just not, you know, print the money and just go blow it at the bar. You know, this is building a hard asset. That means, again, the government gets to print money on that differential 30%. So you end up having different ways you can look at the fund. You could say that guarantor insurance is only a small, tiny sliver on this huge pie concerning the project. So as you have all these pies, all these projects, and the guarantor completion insurance is this teeny tiny part, you could look upon this and Social Security you could say the Social Security account easily can cover the insurance portion. And the insurance is based upon, out of 100 projects, how many are going to fail? Probably likely none. And we're probably talking projects failure rates don't come into effect until you start looking at them by the thousand. And then they only need to be basically serviced. You need to come in and set them straight. So, which still means that it's still going to turn a profit. It just means that not as much profit, because some of it got eaten up because you had to have managers come in and set the situation straight again. So you can look at this in different ways. One of the ways you can look at this is saying that effectively, yes, there's no reason to discriminate against people who have a Social Security fund. That means that you can use your Social Security fund to justify a loan, no problem. And that can be, just like I said, that can be as small as the tiny sliver. So then you're going to borrow the money either from the bank, or maybe you're part of a guild or a union or an organization somehow. And there can be an explosion of organizations, of investment organizations as well. So we're going to talk about that some more, because this definitely is going to get into some very heavy DOJ area material, because it's going to have to be understanding these mass financial tactical tables of how this stuff is going to keep working to be able to make sure that they are running honestly and safely. So with the Social Security, you can also say, okay, I'm going to use Social Security only for the guarantor portion because I have this massive fund. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. So the bank says yes, but now because you also have the guarantor factor of the Social Security fund, you can say, wait a minute, let's take this another step. Okay, the banker says, okay, what's the next step? So the next step is, let's just borrow a little more money, and we're going to incorporate the entire cost of what that insurance would be overall over the course of the entire loan, and just build it right into the loan factor. So now all of a sudden, you don't have to take a dime out of Social Security. You just extended a loan option because you're also guaranteeing it in the event that it still fails, but you extended the loan slightly. You added this 0.5% or 1%, whatever it comes to guarantee that the project's going to be happening. So now you actually are not using your Social Security fund. You're only claiming that in the event of catastrophic that you would have the Social Security cover, but you've already borrowed extra against it, which means you don't technically have to pull any money out of Social Security for fair holding because you justified it into the loan, which means now it's just something that is almost like in spirit's sake, is there. We know it's there. There's no reason to discriminate against it. We can move forward with an ultra high-end modification as we've just talked about. So what we've done here is re-justified a loan area. Now this is different than somebody saying your labor is bankable. You have a job, you're a government servant, you have a job wherever it is, someplace, you basically have your labor, your lifetime workability is basically worth something. And stopping discrimination from this from any loan factors is paramount. This is a carte blanche item because why? Everybody pays for forms of income insurance. Now we're going to end up during my administration closing the gap in employment insurance factors as well. We're going to readdress how that works, and we're going to invent the final sliver to make the entire thing basically no fault. Have a no fault factor on it, closing the remaining gaps behind it, so you now have a 100% guarantor factor. So now you might have people that make the argument and say, well, if you do that, what if somebody says they're just going to be deadbeats and quit? They're not going to do anything. Well, first of all, that's also an understanding that's built into the employment insurance sliver, teeny tiny sliver, that people basically some people might do that and it would be hard to prove. But here's the thing, you can't discriminate based upon this remote concept that this tiny sliver of people might do something. So that's not a valid argument. You basically have to disqualify the argument and say that's not a reason to justify discriminating against everybody else. There's no reason for it. So we move forward and say, that's the wrong deal. So now we have a balanced system where we have two back toes. You have people's lifetime work guaranteed, generally connected to some sort of union. And then you have Social Security, very solid. We now also have a third toe that is in this, the sheer factor that you're young in life. The average person is young in life. And again, we now have the no fault, absolute no fault in it. So this means that any human being, that's the third factor, is basically going to be guaranteed. Now you can look upon this as saying vested citizen versus non-vested citizen. In other words, you can say sorry to people that are not citizens and say, well, the federal system is a governmental system and it's all been invented by taxpayers. And the governance here says that the citizens have a right to vote on and say, no, we don't want to include people coming from all over the world that haven't put into it. They're not vested. So this is a vote situation that is solely the power of the voters to say yay or nay. But on the whole, the factor is definitely there. So we definitely have three source back toes. Now we also have additional back toes that are encompassed into the insurance. We have the disability factor. In other words, people who are disabled are also covered, which means somebody can have a child that's disabled, going to be disabled for life. But again, we've already covered that with our current insurance factors involving Social Security. Now we're going to look at that again in my administration, and we're going to make sure that everything there is copacetic. And I want to add I'm adding the additional back toe factor that will say that a parent can be an advocate to handle the affairs of their disabled child and basically being able to afford provisioning for their future by building, by understanding that they also have an income for life. So that's just, again, justified in the insurance. They cannot be discriminated against for a new construction loan either. Now, notwithstanding the various cost ranges of generalized understanding on what level of loans are justified, there certainly is a justifiable area. Now, there's different ways to look at this and modify this. I can explain more about those later. But on the whole, you now have the parents able to be the advocates to manage the process as the general contractor, so to speak, yet work with their disabled child to make sure that they are going to end up getting something that has features that they like built into the new construction project. Again, the project gets built, the government again gets to print money. So here again is another factor that ends up getting on the expanding list, and the DOJ is going to be having this with their mass financial tactical tables to make sure that people aren't discriminated against. Also, and there's a lot of different ways that can work. Things get complicated, methodologies along the way. So we've added another back toe here that is also, so we have another classification of people that are disabled to be the same equality as the other main three. So they're part of the main three again. And because they also now have an income for life, you can say, well, they have an income for life, even though they're collecting Social Security, but they still have a Social Security account. So here's the screwballness of this. Are they still entitled to use their Social Security income for life as part of a guarantor project, especially if they say, well, let's do a little larger loan. They've got an advocate that's going to manage the project and do a secondary construction setup. In a nutshell, I'll jump forward with this. You've got three separate construction loan factors in play. So that's three houses: first home, second home, vacation home. Now these are all stabilized, and again, it's to the government's interest to allow these to occur, because each time the government gets to print money, which statistically as an average is generally going to be at least $90,000 times 3. So basically the government has a windfall. This is a windfall situation of $270,000, which, by the way, might end up being more money than some of these people would pay in taxes for their whole life, their whole working life. So this is a massive financial area, and people can make different arguments. You have ancient arguments that were made at the start of the country about if money is justified to be printed based upon asset generation, that parties would have the right to be stockholders and investors in that, and they would have the right of stewardship claims into that, which means residuals and other guaranteed loan factors. So now if you've done three completed projects, you done made the government $270,000. So there's a lot on the table to consider some of these earlier arguments. Again, it goes back to the DOJ getting a new extended financial granting for commitment for historical research in law in various areas to understand implied laws, gap laws, laws or hidden laws, self-evident rights, and plans that could be in the making that got burned by the British because of the 60-Year War. So there's a lot in here to understand what is feasible in various people's minds that could have been part of a forwarding table item that got destroyed due to invasion, insurrection, etc. So here we have a lot of additional avenues of financial justification and investment that also deal with options for building a stronger country. And the sheer fact that citizens' labor on the whole is originally what built the nation. It's people's labor that did all the work, that started the nation. Now, at the moment, I don't feel like getting into all those different things that I've talked about and other things about how our forefathers did really interesting things like print currency to go buy chairs and tables and various furniture and then export it and sell it at auction worldwide, regardless of loss, to get coin back in, to get silver, copper, even gold into the country. This was a solidity engineering factor that our forefathers did, which was very brilliant. And I talk about that actually somewhat extensively overall in some of the other recordings I have. So let's consider people in the military for just a few moments here. Again, we have these three factors definitely solid. We've talked about. There's many more, which gets real complicated, and I have to mention them because it's going to be, again, every time something gets invented, the DOJ has to have it added into their financial mass warehouse of tactical tables on how things are going to work. It's just going to happen that way. But if we look at the military now, we have millions of years of experience in many areas. It's just the way things work. So aside from the fact that, yeah, we have to provide for common defense and all that stuff, we also have certain morale aspects. We're also upgrading people in the military because they're entitled to definitely have their 3 projects. And again, they have millions of years of experience in understanding how to deal with families, family problems, all kinds of things. And they can also have financial advisors. So upgrading the financial advisory system on the whole for the DOD is part of the project. So again, it's the same thing that's going to be done with other departments. Yet I mentioned in another recording that there was all these really super brilliant ideas in finance that were captured from people, from RICOs and stuff like that. And that's going to have to end up getting disclosed, and that's going to get absorbed into a mass AI database system. And all citizens and government employees, and that includes the military, are going to end up having access to this. So we're going to have a bunch of supermen that are AI agents that are ultra brilliant, that are going to be more brilliant than almost, eventually it's going to have, they're going to be more brilliant than all the collective financial minds in the country or even the world. So the new coming stability of using AI to guarantee continued max production is important. So for the military, again, we can consider, do we have a fourth vestation? Because by serving in the military, they just might be taking more risks than anybody else. And this deserves a special consideration, in my view. Now, obviously, there are citizens that would probably want to vote on some of these items, but I don't see that people are going to vote against it. And I do see a historical constitutional understanding where there was a certain respect for this. So now we're talking about dramatically upgrading the military and adding yet again another solid back toe. So there's a fourth one. So that's part of the incentive to be a member of the military, because you're going to also immediately have what's built up to become financial advisors. You're going to be guaranteed to do those projects, which, by the way, are going to be remote. If you're going all over the world, you're probably going to be forced into government housing, because you don't know if you're going to stay there 3 weeks or 3 months, and they can move you around again. So this investment project is probably going to be something more like a cabin, a decent piece of cabin property. It can also be collectives. I haven't got into collectives yet. Collective understanding for resort properties. This can have various levels. This can have Justice Department employees getting together saying that they're putting a pool together, they're designing a project, and it's like a milkshake, and everybody puts ideas in it and they shake it, and then people look at it and say, no, that's not exactly what I want, but other people say, yeah, that's pretty close, I can deal with that. So it gets critiqued, and they can be these individual projects that are collective projects, 60, 80 unit, whatever, for a remote camping or resort situation. And these can be anywhere. They can be on the beach, they could be in the mountains, they could be in the desert. And the same thing basically for military people. So we can look at aspects of, do you want to participate in some of these projects or go totally independent? I want to say, if you're going to get involved into an extra collective group, that is a fifth back toe hard investment item, because you have a new collective of more parties gaining together that justify yet again a brand new understanding of the insurance factor of loan completion guarantee. So I'm going to call that the fifth factor. That's the fifth construction factor project. Now, you can have special needs. Certain people, DOJ or military, might say they want to participate in an aero park. Well, there could be good reasons for this. Maybe they want to have a long-term career, and having aero park access could end up being to their advantage, even if they don't even own an airplane. Even if they don't own an airplane, this could be where they're nearby. They're not necessarily on the strip. They're nearby it, but they could effectively get to aircraft and be redeployed quicker. There is a certain logic to this, so to speak. So into this, there's a lot of different options that are on the table in these areas where people can get creative. Now, I'm going to say real quick that obviously similar things can happen with different unions, different guilds that can have different purposes. You can have artist unions, singers, theater players, whatever it is, they can have specialized interest in wanting to put maybe some types of theme parks together. Now, into this, you also have zones. You have different zones where different people will be interested in participating in making, let's call it high-end, expensive resort projects, and they would want to be guaranteed the completion. Now, there is a factor that involves an assessment in everything that's ever done in these items that says, are you overdeveloping? Are you overdeveloping? And that has to be considered in any project, because there are generalized formulas, so to speak, that kind of exist that are reasonably justified at this point. Not to say that that's completely set in stone, but the overall concept has to be kept. So you have two factors. You have, are they overdeveloping? Does it qualify in the same nature? And then you also have the understanding that some people at some levels might want to participate in a different project. Their income level is different. You know, it's like, yeah, you got people get together and say, yeah, I make $5 million or more per movie. Yeah, you would be interested in a different sort of a resort project. You'd also have different types of security concerns. And of course, security concerns can be of a concern for almost any different group. SAR is a factor, involving that as an option. I'll discuss that at a later time. I've mentioned it before in different other items. But the reality is that, yes, essentially that there would be additional considerations, but also there is a fairness factor. In other words, you can't totally justify an overpriced situation. So that's something that, again, DOJ would have in its mass financial tactical table evaluation and understanding. So they're the ones that might make notice. There's other people, other agencies might make notice on that, so there's different ways that can work. But essentially now, I think I've covered this. We're at the 5 back toe understanding. There's extensionalism on variances. How to number those, it's kind of wide open. But as we consider these different back toes, we also have another back toe that says if you've done 3 solid projects, then technically you qualify for yet again a different project. So additional factors can be considered in additional ways. In other words, someone can say, I want to opt in for something where it's vacation property. I want to own it. I don't want it to be a share. I want to own it. But I'm willing to do bed and breakfast with it. So to justify part of the capability for paying for the loan, justification on that is an area where this can be considered legit. So this basically, again, would apply as an option to any of the aforementioned. So this brings the 6th, that brings the number 6 type of option, extensionalism, that you're going to do a hard asset creation property that's going to have a part-time B&B aspect to help cover the project cost. Now, I haven't gone into different styles of loan, graduated payment loans, and different stuff. That's also part of the flexibility of the different projects and project styles. And there's a minimum understanding to, say, an anti-poverty factor. In other words, some people might be locked into what's perceived as a lower income situation that they want to apply, but we've dramatically changed the entire concept of hard asset generation. So this effectively gets a significant change. So if we're working with a teeter-totter, we've got a lever here, and we're going to look about graduated payments. Let's consider that somebody who's disabled, maybe they were born disabled or became disabled as a child, and they have what is perceived to be generally a lower lifetime income output. So we can look at this and say, well, if you allow some leeway on graduated payments, basically, then you look at the reality that there is always going to be, at some level, in theory, an increase in value. Real estate generally goes up in value. Now, I'm not going to say that I justify what some people are claiming super ballooning of values. I don't necessarily believe that some of these areas were valid, that there were areas where you had people that all of a sudden had houses that should have only been worth $450,000 that went up to $1.2 million. And there was no logic, because you could build that same home within 7-mile area and bring it back in for $450,000, but someone wants to say it's worth $1.2. So this is a problem that happened. I don't want to go into it. Other people talk about the loan factors of what happened there. That's a DOJ concern as well. So goes into their mass modeling stuff. So into this, though, there is definitely a positive timeline for the future to say that there's going to be increases. There's going to be. So in other words, this person that's disabled, their income is going to rise, which means they're going to be able to have options to pay a little bit more money at a later time. But they might decide to say that they want to, after the project is completed, they might decide to say they want to get involved in a different project in a different area, and that they want to do a B&B with Project 1 or rent it out. Again, this changes the matrix all over again. So we can give both a leeway understanding and raise the financial outlays limit a bit higher, which extends the radiuses of various financial zones respective to the parties in question. So in this way, we're not condemning people to be married to a slum aspect. If you will pardon and understand the respect here, that the concept here is to basically reinvent a reasonable, justifiable consideration in logic, solid-based logic, and say we're not going to discriminate against people using solid-based logic, that there is an entitlement understanding in these zones to a certain level. So basically, this is going to be something that's going to get people out of poverty, or at least not thrust them back into poverty. That's the theory. So again, with the disabled person, they're not necessarily married to localization too much. So they could have a different range as to where they might want to go or live or do. So this can be something that also is taken into consideration. So we're talking about expanding the radius of distance options in various areas so that they can build in different areas and be effective. We're also talking about the re-up project because they also qualify in the re-ups, on the re-up projects. So they might want to say that they build a second home and then they're going to rent some out or do B&B, and they want a third home or a cabin. So this is actually possible. Now please keep in mind that disabled people, just because they're disabled doesn't mean that they're completely incapacitated. They might be, they could be, but they might also be able to do part of the project. They might be able to do some of the plumbing or some of the electrical, etc., whatever. So this is important because they can supplement part of their income by doing this. Now this, of course, would also apply to people who are in lower income areas. So with, not going into a bunch of hair splitting all this, effectively, yes, this is going to offer other people range extension options and the option to basically make part of their own work by doing parts of the project. This is all a good thing because the essential system, once this whole thing gets in gear and starts happening, the government makes more money off of people constructing stuff than it does off of taxing them for their labor. This effectively means that we can look at the possibility of transitioning some areas of taxation and basically eliminating them or dramatically reducing them. Because it's in practicality, it's not necessarily worth the labor of the maintaining the mechanism when we have better mechanisms that move faster and pay more. So now effectively we have people that are going to say, well, I see where you're going with this, but in theory you could do bed and breakfast or rentals continuously, so when does this stop? It doesn't. Figure it out as a formula of 1 a year, as a general rule of thumb. So that means basically that people can build 1 a year. Now I realize that this is an understanding that gets 45 years, 45 houses or cabins or whatever, that's a bit short of the 480 where I laid out the lectures on the 480, that our actual labor is worth 480. And there's a valid argument for all of that. So, but this is starting us off, getting us into understanding the solidity and how this mechanism has to be formed, how we're going to have areas of government, departments, whatnot, do different functions for different stability aspects, different fairness, and of course that includes the DOJ. So this is going to be able to give us a lot of dramatic aspects. Now, there's a couple other modifiers into this, such as in my administration, I want to get an item passed or somehow dealt with where legally, an understanding that if you allow 10 million people to come in the country, whatever the number is, 3 million, 7 million, whatever, if you allow that many people to come in the country, they're going to need housing, which means that basically you can't force upon other citizens a constant pressure, a constant extra pressure of inflation going up because there's more demand upon food. I've talked about that in some other items. There's some very serious problems with being able to keep up with meat supply. I'll discuss that more later. But basically, so as a rule of thumb, if you let 7 million people in the country, there has to be 7 million more guaranteed home options, new construction, so to speak, afforded. And those have to be to vested American citizens. And we have to consider the fairness ratio. Which area of society is being burdened more? Are poor people being burdened more because food is going up in price and rent is going up? Yes, they are, which means that we have to say it is reasonable for us to give priority to get these people on board with hard construction, new hard construction aspects. So I'm going to say that at least for the first 10 years that these projects, in addition, whatever we let in, if it's 3 million, 7 million, 10 million, there has to be that many more added options for new construction. It can't be melded with the normal factors. It has to be an added factor. So these are special designed options. We're going to have to find out a way to deploy them. Is it going to be like a lottery? How are we going to do this? But it's going to happen because you have to have a counter factor in lieu of the new demand. People come in, they're going to need housing. Well, that has to get picked up somehow. And we can't overburden. We can't punish people who are already burdened. It's unfair. They're not being protected. They have to be protected. And in this way, we're going to have to address this at a minimal level of a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, we have to continue with another item. The item deals with, DOJ and some other agencies as well. But the consideration that people have claimed that there is a discrimination by the way that the Fed system works, that banks have been getting for hundreds of years, 150 years, exclusive rights to borrow money wholesale. Well, that's actually an argument. So a lot of what's going to be happening in the transition of what I just talked about is that you're going to have parties getting a hold of money wholesale. In other words, they say, well, we built our credit union, we're a bank, and we deserve to be able to get money wholesale just like anybody else. And some of them do. So again, there's an equated area where, again, the DOJ is going to be working with their mass warehouses, buildings full of mass tactical tables, so to speak, understanding how there is not a discrimination factor. Because if we address a discrimination factor, then we're talking about a caste system. That's unconstitutional. Or one of the other definitions, which are also unconstitutional. So into this, we have to, in effect, say that basically we have to allow wholesale access to money. This basically means that because of the new blockchain design, we're dramatically going to be lowering. We're talking about a $65,000 cost value going down to less than $3,500. This is a significant understanding. And of course, we're also talking about wholesale financial access. So on the whole, a union or organization is going to be as though a bank. It's a financial credit union, but they're not going to make the same percentages necessarily as a bank. Now into this you have some other factors. For instance, unions can say, we want to group together and all put a little extra money into the pot, and we want to build our own little special vacation area or theme park or whatever it is. These things can be brought to a table and discussed. So there's different types of concepts that can be discussed, and again, they would have the rights to gain access to what? Money at a wholesale level. So the solidness of the project is going to be the primary area of understanding on the legitimacy of the project. But this is fully engulfed into understanding how various parties might want to do things. You can have basically organizations inventing forms of state fairs. Different. There can be almost no limit to what they might want to do, and connected to different activity. And it can also be partnered. You can have people that can end up partnering. I mean, anything's open. If they can figure out how to negotiate a deal with Disneyland and say, yeah, we've got 29 different unions and guilds that want to work a deal with Disneyland and make some special mini out parks deals, well, that could happen. So anything could hit the table on this. So understanding the rights of Americans, there's going to be a lot of heavy legalization on this situation, because you might have a lot of lawsuits starting to come up from banks. But there again comes the DOJ, there comes in other agencies to understand what is the Constitution, because the exclusive factors that have been put into effect were initially designed not to be necessarily permanent. Someone might say that they're permanent, but our forefathers had to make certain decisions at certain times to facilitate certain activity that would be a reasonably stable concept. So yes, effectively we're going to have an awful lot of upgrading and responsibilities coming into the DOJ. We're going to have to look at do we want to, we're going to obviously have to create different sub-departments, different types of new heads for different departments. There's a lot of work that's going to have to be done in these areas. Now, again, we also have AI assistive tooling. And you can't emphasize enough of how high speed things can go. Now, I've stated that I want everyone to get 5 computers immediately nationwide. We have to figure that out. I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to make that happen because why? Well, becoming president gives me the power to do that. Why? Well, there's a legality set of factors involving that the government is liable. And in the interest of protecting the nation, I have the right to do certain tactical adjustments legally. So I can make it happen. I examine some of the laws in different areas. I can make things happen. So there's going to be things happening because we have to do it. The current $2.8 billion people of China and India brings about a vast competitiveness compared to our 330 million people in this country. So it's really not a joke here when we consider that we have to be doing enormous max production upgrades in this country. And we now have the guaranteed stability factor that one of the wisest choices is to upgrade every single citizen at a personalized level. And this means housing this way. Now, I've talked about other extensions that, added additional shops, outbuildings, so forth, etc. These also rely upon income or using the teeter-totter level system to blend that. And of course, the factors involving rentals or bed and breakfasts can also be a certain factor as well for multi-unit understanding. So we have a lot of stuff here that basically we can do that can really move things forward. I'm going to end it at that. I'm sick. I've got a cold. Gee, darn. Okay. Michael Crosby running for POTUS, transitional arguments. DOJ, various departments involving tactical understanding and new non-discriminatory hard asset development and mass upgrades to the citizens of this nation.